Exercise number 14. Ready? Start. Sir, I would like to draw attention to some aspect of the export policy and the strategy. We all know that our exportable surplus is only a very small part of our gross national product, roughly of the order of 5 to 6%. We know, however, that international trade, foreign trade, is a function of international interdependence. No doubt, basically, we proud for our own consumption, but whatever a natural advantage we have, we naturally have to tap it to build exportable surpluses so that then we can earn the necessary foreign exchange for meeting our essential requirements. The essential policy that we have followed is correct. I see nothing wrong to fight against. The policy of export promotion and import substitution must remain our policy, but it seems in actual implementation we have failed on both fronts. Our share of the world trade has come down from roughly 1% about 2 decades ago to less than half a percent in 1984. We remain primarily an exporter of primary products despite all the noise we make about non-traditional items. Tea, jute, iron ore, rice, spices, cashew nuts are our mainstay, and we have probably the only exception among the major items, textiles, leather, if you can call it an industrial product. We hear so much about engineering goods. Our export of engineering goods accounts for 0.1% of the total world trade in engineering exports. 20 years after we made our first engineering export to the United States, sometimes in 1977. I think this needs to be improved. I have therefore a few suggestions to make. I feel that our markets must be diversified, and so should be our resources of supply. We should think of markets nearer home, in our close vicinity, in Africa, West Asia, in Southeast Asia, and one way of doing it will be to build mutually beneficial relationships, ties of interdependence. Secondly, there are a number of items in which greater efforts has to be put in order to organize the producers and exporters. I do not want to say combines in associations, and I think a little bit of a beginning was made in the case of jute. We can do a better collective bargaining with our buyers, and we can have more favorable terms of trade, better international marketing than we are having today. Thirdly, we have to add naturally to our value adding capacity. From iron ore we are going to Palestine, but why cannot we go to iron and steel? After all, for a excellence where the highest standards possible are maintained, these centers are then utilized for producing high quality teachers, textbooks and other materials, which in turn help to extend the excellence generated in these institutions to others and ultimately to raise the standards of the system as a whole. The establishment of Indian Institute of Technology is a good illustration of this process of improving standards in higher education. It has yielded good results so far, and if persisted on proper lines, it will eventually crown our efforts with success and help us to raise the standards of the entire system of technical education. I wish such programs could be developed in other sectors of higher education as well. While I greatly appreciate these attempts at improving quality, we have to be on guard against two dangers. The first is to ensure that this pursuit of quality does not push up the costs to impossible levels. I concede the point that good education cannot be had without a cost, and that a nation which desires to have good education should also be prepared to pay for it. But research studies have shown that the converse of this statement is not necessarily true. Very often, institutions where the cost per student is high show a proper level of attainment than some others where the cost per student is much lower. It cannot, however, therefore always be argued that an education which costs more is necessarily better. What happens in practice is that costs of education mount up for reasons other than those of qualitative improvement, snobbery, lack of proper planning, or the adoption of absolute techniques. Good scientific research, for instance, costs more money, but larger amounts can also be spent on providing marble floors to laboratories or on the purchase of costly equipment which is only occasionally utilized. We have to ensure that such causes of increase in costs are avoided and that costs per student are reduced to the minimum possible, consistent with the maintenance of necessary standards. This will be possible through the adoption of modern scientific techniques, better planning, and greater human effort. The institute should not be satisfied merely by maintaining the highest standards. They should also evolve techniques to avoid waste, to make the best use of all available facilities, and to reduce costs to as low a level as possible. This is an important aspect of the problem which I commend for your serious consideration. Stop.